Welcome to this communal slap. Originally we thought we might hold this at an open-air cinema, have a barbecue, a few drinks, bring the family, kids could muck around. No, we decided that wasn't such a good idea after all. You here in the audience are very lucky because when the Wheeler Centre alerted its members to this event in an email, it booked out. There were 220 seats in the cinema and it booked out in less than 10 minutes. And I think that shows that the slap has hit a collective nerve, that it addresses issues that we need and want to talk about in Australia today, that it's got us thinking about things like morality, family and identity. So it's a great pleasure to be here together with novelist Christos Tsiolkas, the author of The Slap, the lead director Tony Ayres, who also is from Matchbox Films, who also directed, as well as overseeing the direction and the quality of the overall project, he also directed 2 episodes, episode 6, Manoli, with the oldest character in The Slap, and episode 8, the final episode, Richie, with the youngest episode in The Slap. And it's great to have Blake Davis here, the actor who plays Richie in the final episode. Please join me in making him welcome. Quick bit of audience participation. How many of you, and I want you to call out, not just put up your hands because we're recording this for radio, how many of you have read The Slap? Yes! Okay, how many of you haven't read The Slap? Yes. Okay, so there are a few no's. And are there some of you who are reading The Slap now because of the TV series? Yes. Okay, a few of them as well. Well, look, we'll make you a promise, no spoilers. We're not going to tell you, we're not going to spoil episode 8 for you, okay. I'm going to start by going back to the very beginning, Tony Ayres, episode 1, in which Hector's barbecue with all his friends and family, his 40th birthday party, the kids are playing cricket in the backyard, and we get this incident where Hector's cousin, Harry, slaps the feral 4-year-old Hugo. And that's a key moment because everything flows from that, the court case, the police investigation, the falling out between family and friends and so on. So it's important how hard that slap is. How did you decide how hard to make that slap?
We just kept slapping him until we got it right. So we had a few choices in the edit. It just kind of happened. I think because the cast and the director and everyone was so kind of anxious about this moment because it was going to be the defining moment of the entire series. There was this energy and it just kind of happened in the first take, and the slap happened, and it was very carefully choreographed, and we had a stunt person, and it was very carefully explained to young Julian, who played Hugo, what was going to happen, and it just happened, and then it erupted, and that first take was what we used and it was electric.
Christos Tsiolkas, was the slap too hard, too soft, or just right, in your view?
I think the short answer is just right. It's interesting because in the book, it's never actually described where Hugo gets hit. That's left up to the imagination of the reader, obviously. But it felt like when I saw the first episode, and I saw the first episode in a rough cut before the music had come and been there, but the visceral kind of shock of seeing it felt absolutely right. It felt like on a visual level it captured what I hope I had managed to do when I was writing it. It was interesting, my brother was actually on set that day because my niece Caitlin plays Hector's niece, and he's not a great reader, my brother.
Don't tell me he hasn't read your novel.
He's listened to it in the car. But he was saying,
it's family for you.
Listening to, that actually seeing the slap happen, performed by the actors, was so shocking. And that first, what you said about the first take, he thought they captured it in that moment.
When we had our world premiere at the Melbourne Film Festival, the first 2 episodes, and it was projected in front of an audience, and the moment that Hugo gets slapped, you could actually hear the gasp in the audience. And that, I think it had to have that effect, because if it was, if it was such a trivial event, it wouldn't have the weight or that it needed to have to carry the whole series. So and interestingly, when we were sort of following the online responses afterwards, there was a huge debate about how hard he should have been slapped, and some people were saying, "Oh, that's terrible. I never imagined he would be slapped that hard, and it's so different from the book." And other people were saying, "No, he deserved it," and that was the kind of debate that the book really...
And that's the point, really, because if the slap is too hard, then Harry is the total enemy, and there's no coming back. Blake, you were on set for the slap.
I was just about to say, I remember doing the scene, and I was reading and go, all right, yeah, we'll do it. During the block for in the rehearsal, there was no swearing involved because Julian was there, and
So you had rules on set.
Yeah, we didn't want to swear in front of him, and I was standing there going, okay, yeah, we'll do it. And then the first take happened, and the slap happened, and everyone was swearing and screaming at each other. Melissa was grabbing people, and I thought she was about to hit someone. And then they called cut, and I was like, whoa. That was really scary. But I don't know, looking at it, I don't know, I reckon if I was that kid in real life, I would be pretty traumatised, which,
it's the point, in a way, isn't it? Yeah. Christos, how involved were you in the process of converting the novel to a TV series?
Look, one thing I want to be really careful about is not to take any undue credit, because for what.
Yeah, we don't want too much false modesty either, Christos.
Okay. I got involved right at the beginning. I guess the biggest involvement, the most important involvement, was there was a 3-week workshop period, which was myself, all the writers on the slap, Tony and Helen Bowden from Matchbox, and that, I've said it was one of the most wonderful collaborative experiences of my life, which is really, being in a room from 9 to 6, just talking about story, talking about ideas. How do you make interesting drama? How do you make interesting story? How do we do something on Australian television that is exciting? And to be a participant in that was fantastic. That was the real, I think, the main chunk of my involvement. And then everyone has been incredibly gracious. This isn't false modesty. It's been incredibly gracious of informing me all along the way of what they were doing. So I feel like I've been in a very privileged position with the slap.
And did you see a lot of it being filmed? I mean, did you watch the actors sort of inhabiting your words, making them into flesh and blood, as it were?
I came a few times to the shoot, and in fact, I'm in one episode. I played Paul.
Which one?
I'm in Minority.
All right.
No, in Rosie. Sorry. Which is my cameo moment.
Did you insist on that? Was that part of the deal?
I actually wanted to be a barman. That was so. Any filmmaker out there, I still want a role as a barman. And I
asked him for a few more takes, though.
And the other thing is my reaction shot ended up on the cutting room floor. So I don't think acting is my forte. I have talked about the one that is really significant in my mind is the Connie episode, where I went along and it was my partner was there, my cousins, and a really good friend, and just watching it, and it was such a privilege to see how TV is made, how a film is made. But then there was a scene where Connie confesses a rape to Richie. It's a very difficult scene, and that for me was the moment where I realised that those characters no longer belong to me. Watching Blake and Sophie do those takes, and that was they're not. You don't have them often. Those moments where that chill does go up your spine, and you realise that it felt like something magical had happened there. Because, if they were my characters, they were in my mind. I'd thought about them for so long, but suddenly they had flesh and blood and they became something else.
Blake Davis, were there particular challenges for you in inhabiting this character of Richie?
Well, Christos was on set a couple of times, and I did kind of feel like I wanted to talk to him about it, and I came up and asked him a few questions and whatnot, and then eventually I got my book signed. But at the start of the show kind of thing, I had a meeting with Tony and meeting with Brendan Cow, who wrote my episode and who plays my dad in the episode. It was just good to kind of get it out in the open and talk about it a lot kind of thing. And I think, it was just...
What kind of questions did you ask Christos?
What was his take on how gay he should be?
What did I say?
I don't know, but hopefully it's fine.
Now, Blake, we're all sitting here in the cinema, and people are listening to us on Radio National at home, but we're sitting in here about to watch communally the last episode of The Slap. You haven't seen it. This is your episode and you haven't seen it.
I haven't seen anything. I've seen a tiny bit in ADR, which is the voice, like some of the words you have to replace. But apart from that, no, I haven't seen nothing. Kind of scared.
So you're going to stay here and watch it with us?
Yes, I think my mum's more excited to see it probably than me.
Tony, as director, Tony Ayres, The Slap is a long novel. Each chapter is quite dense. There's a lot that has to go, a lot that has to, be trimmed out. How do you go about making those decisions about what to leave out?
Well, as Christos said, we kind of decided as a group, really. We had the luxury of spending 3 weeks in the plotting room where we worked together to work out, how to make the story. And a lot of the time it was just, where the difference between a drama and a novel is that a drama has to have a particular kind of structure, and it has to have a kind of narrative compulsion. And so a lot of the time was the decision of what stayed and what went was what was actually telling the centre of the story.
And you also had to change some stuff, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, I think that is inevitable in adaptation. The great thing about having Christos in the room was all of us were so in love with the book, I don't think we would have felt as though we could change things, but Christos just kept saying, oh no, change it more. Why don't you do this?
And Christos, were there bits that you felt particularly protective of or worried about that?
Look, I think just thinking about that, going back to that day, I remember I was so nervous about meeting everyone, and I was really nervous that they thought that they were going to, that they thought I'd cramp their style. I'd be this really overprotective writer.
They'd all be looking over their shoulders
yes.
at you.
Yep. Yeah, and I think, but within 10 minutes that disappeared. The thing that I said right at the beginning of that workshop, and I think it was honoured, more than honoured in the series, was I said, if this is going to work, you're going to have to keep... I'm trying to remember the word. It was...
Rawness.
The rawness of it.
Yeah.
Because if it's not raw, if you don't keep that, then it's going to fail. It's just going to descend into soap opera. And I think the rawness I'm talking about is a voice and a spirit. It's not actually about particular plot points. And what's interesting for me as a writer, I'll be brief about this, but is when you've got these talented people looking at story, there were 3 times in particular where I just went, oh, fuck, I'm sorry. Peter, before you all came in, he said, the one thing you can't do is say that word.
Too late now. It doesn't matter. We'll warn the audience on Radio National before this goes to air that they may find some occasional offensive language. But what were you going to say, Christos?
That actually, there were points where I thought, I wish you were there in my study when I was writing this book, because there are kind of certain ideas with particular characters that I wish I'd incorporated in the novel.
And Blake, how do you incorporate that rawness in the performance?
I don't know. I think a lot of it had to do with Tony kind of... We kind of read the script, but we never really blocked it with the cameras and stuff and jumped up there. So I think one of the good things was he kind of just jumped up and go, all right, and just do it. And we kind of just did it, and he gave me a little bit of direction and a kind of thing to work with the lights and the camera. But I think a lot of it got to do with, I don't know, keeping the takes down to a minimum and kind of trying to keep, you know, the first or the second take.
And did you read the book a lot? Did you go back to the novel a lot?
Well, it's interesting because I read the book, and then Mum read the book, and as soon as she finished reading the book, I had an audition 2 days later for it. And Mum goes to me, oh, you'll probably get the role now. And I go, oh, hopefully. And I auditioned for it, and there was like a week later, and then I told this to everyone. Tony goes, no, you're too good looking for the role. You probably won't get it for the role.
I say that to all the actors.
So, a few weeks went later, because my hair was really short, and I read it thinking, oh, he's not going to have short hair. You know? And I said in the audition, my hair will grow, just, you know. Anyway, so then they flew me to Sydney just for the second audition. And I was like, well, they're flying me to Sydney? Okay, I'll go. And I went there, and Sophie Lowe was there, and she plays Connie, and we did our audition together. And I walked out saying, oh, they really like you. I think they'll get you. And she was laughing, and I go, what are you laughing about? And to this day, she still hasn't told me what she was laughing at. I'll probably give her a text.
And I'd like to invite you in the audience to get involved in this discussion. We have a couple of roving microphones. If you want to ask a question of our panel, stick up your hand. Don't be shy, because otherwise I'll ask lots more questions. So, we have one right here.
Hi, this is a question for Christos. You spoke about the rawness of your writing. If the producers of the TV show came to you and said, we want you to write more specifically for TV, would you do that? And how does that conflict with your literary principles or the rawness of your writing?
Oh, look, I think... I mean, I certainly would like to... I would certainly say yes to doing more stuff. If the story, if the people involved in the collaboration excited me, I would put my hand up immediately. I think it feels to me at the moment that television, at least in the Anglophone world, is where really interesting drama is happening, where really adult stories are happening. So I would certainly put my hand up, but where I would be careful is my main love and my main activity is writing novels. So it's purely a question of time.
In listener comments and viewer comments on the Slap Facebook page and ABC TV's online site, there are a lot of people who want a sequel. Or they're saying, you can't end the series now. What about an episode with Gary? What about an episode from Hugo's point of view?
Or cooler.
Or cooler, indeed. That was a question.
For me, it feels like the slap had... I said something that would excite me. That wouldn't necessarily excite me because I've been living with a slap for a long, long time. And so it would be a different kind of work that I'd want to do. But thinking back on, just being reminded of being here, thinking back on that 3-week process, thinking back on kind of meeting all these people, I would love to do something like that again. One of the best experiences in my life has been theatre collaboration. And I think that's also something that can happen in film and television. And I'd be a fool not to, if there was an opportunity, not to take it, I think.
Okay, further questions? Okay, one up the back there and one in the middle here.
Thank you. One of the comments I've heard in talking about the book and the TV series with a number of friends is they think the story is very compelling and the issues are compelling, but they don't actually like any of the characters.
I knew we were going to get this question.
And I wondered if that's been just a general reaction, or just my strange group of friends, or is it? And if so, what challenges did that cause you in terms of producing the TV series?
That has been a comment that people have made. I can sort of understand it because no one behaves very well. I like the characters, but I don't think they behave very well. And really, the morality of the slap, I can say it now because it's almost finished, the morality of the slap is really twisted. You know, like if you look, Christos has got some some very, like, it's not necessarily a moral tale. And people don't behave well, and people kind of get away with things. And but I also think that people respond to the fact that actually that's what life is. I mean, who really is all that likeable? You know, who? You know, we've all got things that are real, and things that are not so likeable about. And I think that there's a kind of recognition factor. Also, it incites a kind of passion. You know, the characters are big characters. Like Rosie is quite an extreme kind of person, but she's also a real person. Harry's a very extreme person, but he's also a real person.
But also in Harry's episode, it's quite clear that Harry himself is struggling with who he is, and struggling not to be his father, for example. Yes. Struggling with his violence.
And I just sort of think that there is a kind of truth in it which is compelling, and I do think the truth is that we all have elements in our characters which are both good and bad.
Blake Davis, is Richie a nice character?
I like to think so.
Likeable?
Everyone keeps saying to me that they think Richie's episode or Richie's chapter is their favourite, because I think he's at the end of his episode it's resolved for him a lot more, I think, than a lot of the other characters. Everyone loves Richie, at least I think so, at the end of the episode. So yeah, I would say he's a likeable character. Yeah.
We'll take another question. We've got one in the middle there. Yep.
Christos, how did you go about deciding which characters to write chapters for, and were there some that you started writing chapters for and then thought, no, there's not enough material, and so then discarded them?
Yeah, that did happen. There was initially when there were 13 characters that I wanted to, which was just the novel's long enough as it is. It would have been really unwieldy. Really interesting, and not until the second draft did I write through Rosie's voice, and it was obviously something I was scared. There was a fear there about doing that, and the whole kind of court case, that whole experience was written through a character, Shamira, who really, that was in the first draft, and it was, and I was sitting down with my editor, who's fantastic, who the book's dedicated to, who she said, you've got to choose. We need the mother's voice, or we need the father's voice, and I had initially thought I was going to write Gary, but then. This is the thing that happens when you're working on something. I became more and more fascinated by the friendship between the three main women in the book, and so it felt like right that it had to be through Rosie's voice. It's really. Can I just quickly say on the likeable thing? It's so. I don't know. I had this moment earlier today where I was on the phone, just doing a transaction, and I had the vilest thoughts because I was being put on hold. If you want to do this, and I really like murderous, horrible, misogynist thoughts, and then coming at the end of it going, oh, you're not this, don't, and so it surprises me. It just surprises me that, am I the only one in this room that does that? No.
I have my own theory about the likeable, dislikable thing. I've sort of, this might be a bit controversial. I think that the people who dislike the characters the most are the most like the characters themselves.
I think that's true.
Hi, I'm going to do that annoying thing of saying I've got a comment and a question. The comment is just that when Loaded first came out, I lived in a household in Northcote whose dog was in severe danger of suffering from Munchausen's by proxy because we all wanted to take him to the vets all the time because we were all such fans. But the question was around... The question was around the switching of ethnicities of characters in the series from the novel, and in a novel where culture and ethnicity seem to have some really interesting kind of moments where things butt up against each other. I just wondered what any comments from the panel about any changes that were made and what the reasons and the response.
So the most obvious example being Aisha, who in the novel is Anglo-Indian and in the film, in the TV series, is Mauritian. Yeah.
Yes. We did try to cast according to the ethnicities in the novel, and we just couldn't find the actors who... I mean, we auditioned some really fantastic actors, but they didn't feel exactly right. And so then it became a question of, do you cast the wrong actor for their ethnicity, or do you cast I sort of think that there is a balance of other qualities that you need to have to make it right. So it was a difficult discussion, and we talked to Christos a lot about it. And but in the end, we were looking for a very particular kind of person, say particularly for Aisha, and so the way that we could find that was by changing her ethnicity. She still had to be other, so she couldn't be an Anglo character. We knew that, but we had to sort of broaden the search. But we did look everywhere. Like in Australia, we actually looked in the UK. We actually looked in India. We looked in Canada. We looked,
And then part of the process, talking about the kind of involvement there, which was really interesting, was that when Tony and everyone talked to me about that, I kind of went away, and there's a friend of mine who's actually doesn't live here, but her background is Mauritian, and so what I started thinking of is, well, if this. What would be her story? And I mean, it was only a couple of pages, but I wrote a backstory for Aisha, coming from that background. And Mauritius, is a really interesting place because it's got that the colonial European influence, it's got Indian influence, and it's got the African influence as well. And once I started thinking it in that way, Aisha it made sense. And there's something that I think Sophie Okonedo brings. What you needed with that character is this kind of internal strength that has to be visible on the screen, and I think you get that. It's quite phenomenal. I think you get that from the first moment you see her in episode 1, that she's got that.
More questions, lots more questions. A couple down the front here. I'm going to start, while we're getting the microphone in place, let me just ask another question. Tony Ayres, did you set out with this film, with this TV series, did you set out to present a different face on Australian television, a different kind of Australia?
One of the reasons that I was so keen to make The Slap as a TV series was I've done a lot of work, particularly for SBS, working on sort of stories of other cultures, and The Slap seemed to me to be like the future of multicultural representation, which was that these were people who came from a range of backgrounds that we don't normally see on our screens, but that wasn't what the story was. Actually, the story was, it was the new kind of middle class sort of non-Anglo Australia, which is like Christos and me, really. And that's a representation of Australia we just don't see very often. So yes, it was absolutely part of the intention.
Question.
Well, thanks, Christos, for a very powerful story. But one glaring omission for me was that there was probably not too much humour in it. Was there not even black humour? And I was wondering whether that was a conscious decision on your part, and I suppose the production team part, to just drop the humour or the humorous aspect, because humour is part of Australian culture, and I felt that it was not there.
Are you talking about both the book and the series?
Book and the series, for me. For me, there may have been, but I didn't pick it.
Look, I'll try and think through that. I guess what happened, I can talk about the writing of The Slap, is that these were... the way the book works is you are completely in the interior of of these characters, and you're giving them a voice. And the book is written, it begins at a moment of crisis, and we see these 8 characters all at a point of crisis. So I think that was where my energy as a writer was going to, was actually exploring what it's like at that point of crisis when your world is beginning to be upset. So probably if there isn't humour in it, it comes originally from me. It's my fault in terms of the source of it. I mean, I mean, the humour for me is, I mean, I think, but see, I like the characters. I think they're despicable at times. I think they are unethical, but that felt like the right thing to say about the Australian middle class at the moment. Yeah. I think Gary's a really funny bastard. And I think Anthony...
I think Cool is funny.
Cool, yeah. Actually, Manoli's got... Yeah, actually, that's got some humour.
Cool is very funny.
Yeah.
Without revealing any major secrets, was there a bidding war for the rights to the book, and were you worried about it ending up in the wrong hands, i.e. Underbelly style rubbish?
Look, there were a lot of people interested in the slap. Yes. Some, I was never actually worried about it ending up being with rubbish people. Actually, the people I felt very fortunate. The people who I spoke to about it. I think 2 things made me decide to go with Matchbox. One is that I knew Tony, and I knew Helen Pankhurst as well. I knew Michael McMahon. I trusted them. I trusted their work. I was really, and kind of that's really the reason I went with them more than anything. But also, they were so excited to talk about it with a miniseries. The only other, there was someone who really wanted to make a film about it, and I think that excited me. But to do a film of the slap, you'd really have to truncate it. You'd have to concentrate on a particular character, I think.
You'd be cutting 8 hours down to 8 episodes down to 1.5, really, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Tony, as director or from Matchbox Films, what did you have to do? What did you have to pitch to convince Christos that you were the right hands, the safe hands for this?
Christos is being modest. The slap was the hottest property for many a year, hottest literary property for many a year. Everyone was trying to get it.
Bought me whiskey.
Yeah, we bought you a whiskey. I think we just talked about the way we would do it and the kind of process, and we promised you a good time.
Yeah, which I...
Yeah, so
Christos,
that's always important.
Did you have images in your head as you were writing? I mean, you were writing a novel, obviously, but did you conceive of it visually in some way as you wrote?
I think there's 2 ways I approach writing. One is, I think there is a visual sense that I bring to writing, and that becomes because I'm mad about film, like truly mad about film. I love it. And the other thing is musical. I think in terms of music when I write. But I go back to what I said. Yes, I had a particular sense of who all these characters were. I was actually working, like I would sit at my desk and I would think, how would Richie walk? How would Aisha make a coffee? How do these characters live and work and do what they do? But that's all vanished now. I mean, and I don't feel any sadness about that. I mean, for me now, these actors embody these roles, and I'm actually quite, it's such an astonishing thing to be able to say, because I've got so many friends who've had terrible experiences with film and television, and I don't feel that at all. I feel very grateful that Blake is Richie, that Sophie is Connie, that Lex is Manolius.
Richie, I'm going to ask all the panel, because we're going to have to wind up so we can actually watch the final episode. I want to ask you if there's Blake, if there's a favourite I think I called you Richard, didn't I? Blake Davis, I want to ask you if there's a favourite moment for you in the slap. Is there?
I don't know, it's hard to pick one. And just to go on what he was saying, what Christos was saying before, that it's kind of hard when you are about to play a role that everyone has read the book and they've kind of got their own mind set on each character. And I was a bit nervous and a bit scared, but I think we all managed to kind of get it by. But I don't know, I think my favourite scene would have been the festival scene. Only because we kind of went into this... Where'd we go? Golden...
we're getting in danger of a spoiler here.
Oh, okay.
Well, we better not... yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Typical, your favourite scene was the hardest day of the shoot.
Yeah. All right, look, we will leave it there because we do need to...
see it.
We needed to see it, and join me in thanking Tony Ayres, Christos Tsiolkas,